Okay, this is my graphics assignment 7 video. So first thing was get a graphic object for texture. So you can create it here, then set the texture, and then down in the draw, all you have to do is call render. Sorry, I should have pulled this up. What am I looking for? I'm looking for this. So in the actual class, it just contains the pointer to the texture and the shader and the world. So when you create it, you set it up. When you render, you just have to set that texture to context, send the world, and then render, and you're good to go. So in my scene, I have some old graphics objects just using the shader color, and then I have the crate and the pyramid using graphics object texture, and everything's working well. So next is color light. So same situation here, except now we're housing materials per graphics object. So material, I just made a struct to contain it. You have your material. You can set the material, and when you render, you just send that to the shader, and you are good to go. So in this example, I have some texture graphics objects, color light graphics objects, and regular color ones, and like a couple of spotlights and stuff. So on the left here, and the pink box and the green sphere are both using the color light graphics object, and everything's working fine. Down in the draw, just to be clear, you just are switching between the different shaders, and then you just have to call render on each of those different kinds of graphics objects. And everything is done for you. And then texture light, similar situation. Sorry, this is a texture light, not a color light. It's just put in the wrong comment section. But anyways, so we have a drum set model that I found. Box and terrain are all using the texture light. Similar situation, but now you have a texture and a material. So you can set the material, set the texture. And then when you render, you have to set the texture to context and the material to context, and you're good to go. It's getting a little repetitive, so just to be clear, when you're drawing things and you go to shader light, all you have to do is call render, and you're good to go. So I have the terrain working as well with some pink spotlights. Those are actually, I think those are point lights, and yeah, everything's working fine. And also, if we just have a normal color light, and then color light and also texture light, you can switch between them and nothing breaks. I'm thinking about doing like a kind of a concert scene for my final project in honor of skipping the lighting class to go to one, so we'll see. I like this model. Yeah. That is that one. For the last question, it was going back through and doing multi-mesh for each of those. So now for the texture graphics objects, it is a list of an array of texture pointers. So when you set the texture as a whole, you loop through them, set all the different pieces, or you can set each piece at a time. When you render, you have to set each mesh's individual texture to context and then render that individual part. I feel like I'm dragging on a lot, so just to fly through the rest of these. For color light, you have the array of materials, and then when you render, you loop through it for each material for the mesh. Texture light is similar, except you have to have textures and materials saved. So you can set a material for a particular mesh or a texture for a particular mesh, and then when you loop through, you have to send the corresponding texture and material. So in my example, I have a cottage for each kind of graphics object. So for texture, you set all the different textures. For color light, you set all the different materials. For texture light, you set the textures. And then for the roof, I went ahead and set a blue tinted material, so just so we can see the difference. And if I run it, everything's working. So on the right is just the plain texture. In the middle is, you can see obviously the different textures are appearing for the different mesh components. the different meshes, I mean. For the middle is the color light, the left is the texture light, so with the blue roof and everything. So you can definitely do, do the different pieces of the mesh how you need. For the final further work, it was discussing when you have a mesh with, when you have a model with multiple meshes, is there also a way to do multiple shaders, like a different shader per mesh? So this is my idea. I don't know if it's, I don't think it's great, but the idea is you would have a specific graphics object that is a shader per mesh type, and it would inherit from the base graphics object class. It would have 4 or however many kinds of shaders you have. It would have to have a pointer to each one of those shaders. Then you would have a map also that maps mesh numbers to particular kinds of shaders. So you have color meshes, color light meshes, texture meshes, etc. So the idea is, and then this is struct is just because you need a succinct way to hold the texture and material data for the texture light meshes. So the idea is that you have this graphics object. First, it has all these pointers, but they start out as a null. So if you have any, you can pick any combination of these, but let's say for your mesh you want the color light and the texture, then you need to initialize those. So you have different methods for, shedding the shader color or setting the shader texture, where you just pass in a pointer to the shader that you're using, and anyway, it'll initialize these fields. Okay, so you need to initialize all that. Then, if you want to say, hey, the roof of my cottage is just a color, so I'm going to add it to the color meshes list. So you have to ensure that the shader color has been set up, and then you just add that mesh number to the color meshes map with default data, and you can do that for any one of the maps. And then, if you actually want to say, okay, I need my roof to be blue, then you say set color for this mesh number and this color. You have to verify that that mesh number is actually in the color meshes list and not another list or another map. And then you just update that color data. So for this entry, mesh number, if the roof is 0 for 0, I'm going to update the color to be blue. You could probably do some additional checks, like when you're adding meshes, to make sure there's not like duplicate. You don't want the roof in the texture mesh map and in the color mesh map, so there should probably be additional tests to make sure that the user isn't doing that. But I think this gives you all the combinations you could want and to be able to set what you need. And then in terms of the actual rendering part, you just have to loop through each one of these maps. So like for each entry in the map, you have to set the right stuff to context based on that particular shader, and since it's already organized per shader, you know what things you need to send. So color, you send the color light, you send the material, and or just the material. Texture, you send the texture light, you send the texture and the material, and then you can just render that particular mesh number. So I don't know, it doesn't seem like the cleanest solution, but I think at least it would work. Okay, I feel like I've been talking forever. I'm going to stop recording.